The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
As Scott Hansen, the outstanding host of the Red Zone channel, tweeted out this morning, when wins become losses and brackets become busted. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. These have to be upcoming the two least productive office days of the year. Maybe there are others in contention like the day before Thanksgiving or the day before Christmas Eve, but this is insanity. 16 games today, 16 games tomorrow. We get started at about 12:15. They run until 1 o'clock in the morning. And then we have another full weekend of college basketball. Everybody takes a breath and goes, wow, we're down to 16 teams. How did that happen so quickly? Well, it's a great tradition. It's a great part of the year. And whether you're going to watch at home today with yourself or your friends, or whether you're going to a sports bar or everybody's gathered around somebody's computer at the office and screaming their lungs out as we have buzzer beaters, it's just great. It's just a fabulous part of the sports calendar, and no matter what they do to college basketball with the portal and the NIL and all the other mishigas, these games are still great. They're still fun to watch, and they still give you all the emotions, the great joy, the disappointment, and the heartbreak. And I was watching the AU game last night. As you may know, I spent 3 semesters there and really got my radio career started there. Really, it was great foundation, great teachers there, and more importantly for me, a great campus radio station where I learned everything I needed to know and was able to get my career off the ground at 19 and finish school down in Texas a little bit later on. But, it's one of those things in sports. If you live long enough, everything that goes around comes around. And in watching the horrible heartbreak last night of AU's best player, Matt Rogers, going down 4 minutes into the game, he tried to come back. He went up and down the court a couple of times. I think he did pick up a couple of buckets, had to come out, went back in, had a sleeve on his knee, and tried to play through the pain, and then made a twist on a defensive play, and then just collapsed on the court, and his night was over. And, it's one thing to lose. It's another thing. You lose at the buzzer. Okay, it feels bad. But when you don't have an opportunity to compete with your best player, I mean, it is really, really tough. And here's how important Matt Rogers was to Dwayne Simpkins and the AU basketball team. Simpkins inherited him. Rogers had already been there for 3 years. Because of COVID, got a 5th year. And he was a guy who developed greatly in his 4th year there. And the way things work in college basketball now, once you get to a certain level, you can go wherever you want to go. It's wide open free agency year after year. And he's playing at a mid-major American university, and some big schools are calling with some pretty decent money offers. And Simpkins knew that the key to having a successful season this year was keeping Rogers around for his last year of eligibility. And going into last night's tournament game, talked about how he was successfully able to do that.
Don't surrender. Don't take these short-term riches, so to speak. You have a school community that has embraced you. You have a school network that is going to take you well beyond basketball. It's going to be here for the next 30, 40 years. And you got a chance to hang a banner. You have a legitimate chance to hang a banner. He knew what role that he had here. So, and he also didn't want to disappoint his teammates that he's been here with for 4 years. So all those things combined, man, allowed us to be able to keep Matt Rogers. If Matt Rogers isn't here, quite honestly, I'm probably not here right now.
Yeah, meaning that he wouldn't have been at that tournament game. And AU had a chance to do something else last night after hanging the banner, after winning the Patriot League championship. And they had not done that in the 4 years previous with Rogers. They had a chance to win a tournament game for the first time. They had been in 3 other times, had lost in the first round, but didn't have this kind of an opportunity to play another 16 seed, a team on their level, a team that they had won 4 straight against Mount St. Mary's, played them a bunch of times over the years because they're so close. And because of the fact that Rogers was out for the game with 5 minutes to go in the first half, they just couldn't sustain enough. They missed their leader out there on the floor. They missed their leading scorer. He's the best player in the league, preseason MVP in the Patriot League, and it just wasn't there. Now, you saw, if you're watching the game, you saw Rodgers very emotional. Finally, after he was taken off the court with help the third time, and he came back at the end of the first half. He was on crutches and sat out the rest of the game with his knee in a wrap and elevated on a chair, watching helplessly as his teammates went down. They made a run at the end. They made it interesting. They played hard, but they wound up losing by 11 points. 83-72, and in the post-game news conference, Rodgers, along with Simpkins, showed up with Rodgers, at least for a little bit, kind of holding it together.
As you can see, I tried to give him my all tonight. I feel like I still had a lot left in my heart for these guys because y'all don't know what goes into this process of being a college basketball player. It's really hard. Every day. You got to go to class, you got to wait, practice, and then it's just repeat. And then there's so much hours that go into this. So for me to, go out like that, unfortunately, I wish I could have done more for us, for the AU community, because they deserved a, NCAA win. But, I fell short today. But I was proud of the guys and how they responded and how they adapted with me not being out there. They played their hearts out, and I'm just super proud of this team.
Yeah, 7 points for Rodgers in the limited amount of time he was on the floor. Now, that's one of the questions he answered, and you can hear him struggling to keep it together. And then finally, a couple of questions later, he finally gave in to the emotions.
It's just hard because I gave a lot to this sport. So it's just, you hate to see your body go out like that. But I'm not done by any means, but it's just a little roadblock. But we'll fight through it, and that's it.
Yeah, he probably will get a chance to play in Europe. We don't know how serious the knee injury is. I guess he's probably due for an MRI in the next couple of days, and hopefully he doesn't need surgery. But you got a long time to recuperate. The European season won't start until next fall, and hopefully he'll be ready to go. This was Simpkins' coach on losing his best player and how he was attempting to adapt to it during the game, but then after the loss could reflect.
I guess disappointed at the time, but I kind of had to put that aside really quick and figure out, all right, what's next and how do we play without him. That was the only thing that I was focused on. Now after the fact, it sucks. It sucks. This kid's worked really, really hard. We've coached him hard. He's come a long way. He's you see Matt play enough, he's very feisty. He's very emotional, and sometimes it needs to be redirected. And this year, he has really grown in that area. It's going to make him a better player moving forward. It's going to make him a better person, learning how to deal with adversity. It was disappointing to see him go down like that, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the team without him, they actually had some pretty good shots. They shot pretty well from three, and this is Simpkins on how they were able to, try to sustain without their leader.
Yeah, I was pleased with it. Those are the shots that we value, the shots that we work on. What we normally have to accompany that is this guy with his interior presence and then getting to the free throw line. And, it's tough to do. We shot 8 of them tonight. The possession battle was pretty much even. I think they had one more possession than we did, but they made 14 out of 17 free throws, and we made 5 out of 8. They made 9 threes. We made 13. So at the end of the day, those points in the paint, they hurt. 40 to 22, it helps you get to the free throw line. So that's where we missed this big guy, right?
Yeah, he's a good shooter as well, but he's also 6'9", and presence in the paint was clearly missed. Now, this news conference went about 12 or 13 minutes. This was the final question asked to Simpkins, and this is where, he finally let his guard down and got emotional.
It's hard. I realized that, as a player, I went to the NCAA tournament 3 times, and, it's almost like you expect to do it. And, man, there's some really good coaches who've never done it before. So I don't take it for granted. this is gonna hurt for a while, and but I'm gonna flip the page, and we got 6 very good freshmen coming in, and we're gonna start to develop a game plan of how to get better than this team and take the next step and get those guys incorporated into how we do things, what we do. But this is a dream. This is really a dream, and to do it with these guys, man, I get choked up every single time I think about these guys and what they've done for me personally as a coach. They've made me a better coach. And we'll be back. We'll be back.
Yep. March Madness, March Sadness, a tough way to lose last night as they lose their best player. And I say what goes round comes round, and I mean the name Russell Boo Bowers. That may not mean anything to you, but at my last semester at American University, I got to see him play as a freshman at AU. He's one of probably their 3 or 4 best players of all time. Kermit Washington's the best, and Kermit Washington had a star-crossed NBA career, most famous for the punch against Rudy Tomjanovich, but was an amazing player at AU, averaged 20 points and 20 rebounds a game. His senior year, he was a first-round draft pick by the Lakers and had about a 7 or 8, 9, 10-year NBA career. Boo Bowers comes along 1977, the fall of 77, and develops into an unbelievable player. Gary Williams had him for Bowers' last 2 years there. And when Bowers was a junior, he averaged 26.9 points a game. That was tied for 6th in the country, Division I schools. And stars like Mark Aguirre and Andrew Toney were behind him in scoring. And then that team came close to making the NCAA tournament. They went to the NIT. They lost in the first round. So the 1980-81 team was expected to be a team that would finally break through and send American University to the NCAA tournament for the first time. And there was a campaign to make them an All-American. They put out these little American Express cards with a picture of Boo Bowers on it. I think I still have one. It says American Express, which was the nickname for Bowers. And it said, don't leave home without it, which was a popular phrase in their marketing at that time. And then in the 1980-81 season, senior, possible, first-team All-American, all those things that would have gone with it with a scoring average like that, goes down with the knee injury 11 games into the season, misses the rest of the regular season, tries to come back for the NIT game, didn't make the tournament that year, but went to the NIT for the second straight year. And, his knee just wasn't the same. He wasn't himself. And they wound up losing to Toledo by 8 with, and this, I'm not making this up, the star player for Toledo, his name is Harvey Knuckles. He had 29 points and 10 rebounds, and that was the end of his career. I guess he could not take a redshirt year, even though he only played 11 regular season games, and remained, even with missing all those games his senior year, he still was the all-time leading scorer for about 40 years until Saeed Nelson broke it in 2020. And he went on to be drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they had guaranteed roster spots, and it was third round, so he did not make the team. He played professionally in Italy, Argentina, and France. And that's another one of those. And if I'd have known that this was going to happen, and who would have known that AU star player would go down, I would have asked Gary Williams about this, because Gary was the coach there at AU when Bowers was there. And, he's still, even with a star player out for most of the season, he still got that team to the NIT. That's the kind of coach that Gary was and is. But Boo Bowers, that's where my mind went when I saw Matt Rogers go down last night. I thought of same school, American University, star player who's probably like Bowers going to go on and play in Europe for a long, long time. And the great hope of finally breaking through and having a chance. You can't do it if you don't have a chance. Having a chance to play top seed Duke. If you win last night, and Mount St. Mary is going to have that opportunity tomorrow in Raleigh, And although the odds would have been enormous, I mean, AU probably would have been a 25-point underdog or more. But to go there and have that opportunity and to play on that national stage would have been really incredible. And hats off to Dwayne Simpkins for doing an incredible job for 2 years. Keeps this up. He's not going to be at AU for long, but he managed to hold things together and managed to convince his star player to come back. They didn't get there without him. I mean, if Matt Rogers doesn't play the way he did this year, and including in the Patriot League championship game, then they're not playing last night. So all congrats to him, and just a terrible. There are worse things in life for sure, but in a sports sense, this is about as tragic as it can get. That you go into your great opportunity to win an NCAA tournament game for the first time in school history, and you got a shot to do it because this is a team that's clearly on your level. And then you lose your best player 4 minutes into the game, and you just don't get the contributions that you need. And this will go down as another one of those what-ifs. And those of us who are old enough to remember Boo Bowers, it's a what-if that goes on now for over 40 years, coming up on close to 50 years of remembering that. But that is a what comes round goes round circumstance last night. And to see Matt Rogers go down was absolutely, in a sports sense, tragic. All right, coming up in the next hour, Tony and Mike on the NCAA tournament, and Mel Kiper on quarterbacks that are moving up the draft board. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. There probably has to be some pun involved with a quarterback named Dart moving up the board. Yeah. Jaxson Dart. We'll talk about him in relation to what's going to take place next month. The king of the draft, Mel Kiper, on a morning show yesterday. I'll play some of that, where he thinks Dart will go. 2 quarterbacks at the top, pretty much set. Cam Ward out of Miami, likely to be the first one taken. Shedeur Sanders, number 2. But teams are falling in love with Dart. Who cares? They got a quarterback here, right? March Madness. And, of course, March Sadness, and we saw that last night with AU losing its best player in the first half of their loss to Mount St. Mary's, and that is the heartbreak of the tournament. You have that from time to time, and it's horrible to see. It really is, and hopefully he'll be recovered in time to play. And we're talking about Matt Rogers, the best player at American, recovered in time to play in Europe, because he will have a career in Europe. And he was sold on staying here for another year, that he could have had an opportunity to play at a much bigger school for more money. But because he's been able to make some contacts here, he's a grad student in the business school at AU and will get a master's degree in business. And if at some point he decides that he wants to make a home here and continue that and use that degree to further his business opportunities, well, he's a recognizable name. And what he did in getting AU to the tournament was incredible. He had a great year. He was preseason player of the year in the Patriot League. And they had an opportunity to do something that they'd never done before, and it was a better opportunity because a couple of the years, the 3 previous years they'd been in, they played top teams. And this was a team on their level, Mount St. Mary's, a winnable game, which would have gotten them to a matchup with Duke tomorrow. But Mount St. Mary's pretty much dominated the game. I think at one point they were up by 19. They wound up winning by 11 despite a late run by AU. But hats off to them for a great season, just a horrible way to end it. It's so much worse than a buzzer beater because you never had the opportunity, really, to compete in this game. Did the best they could. Guys played hard, hit some shots. But, when you're a team that's based around a player of that ability, and you don't have them for most of the game because of the knee injury, there's very little chance to win. Anyway, the balls start bouncing big time today at 12:15. They will bounce through like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we do it again tomorrow, and then we have more games on Saturday and more games on Sunday, and by the time we get to Sunday night, we're down to the Sweet 16. And I've heard Jay Billis say this, that the last time we had 4 number 1 seeds make it to the Final Four was 2008. He believes that this is the first year since 2008 that we could have 4 number 1 seeds going again. Auburn is the number 1. number 1 seed. Florida also a number 1 seed. Duke a number 1 seed. And Houston a number 1 seed. And as we know, anything can happen along the way, and none of the 4 could get there. 1 of the 4, 2 of the 4, who knows? That's the beauty of March Madness. And Tony and Mike taking a look at it yesterday on PTI and what they see in opening up the brackets.
I think the narrative of this tournament is the SEC. I think it is the results that the SEC puts up. They have 2 number 1s. They have Auburn and Florida. They have 2 number 2s, Tennessee and who's the other one? And Alabama. They got a number 3 Kentucky. They got a number 4 A&M, which means they got 6 of the first 16. It's an unbelievable array of teams. And now what are they going to do out there?
Okay, well, do you feel confident in the SEC team?
I have watched these teams. And by the way, if they don't get anybody in the Final Four, just go to spring football. Just leave us alone. Go to spring football. I've watched their top 4 teams a couple of times each.
Yeah.
They can all score, but none of them scores like Florida. Florida, Mike, is the best team I have seen all year, unless I just caught them at the best 2 games they played. They look like a juggernaut.
They do. They can put you in the mindset of a couple of other Florida teams that won.
With Billy
Donovan went all the way. I don't have any great confidence in any single team.
Right.
I'm fascinated by this tournament because I really believe this, and I am not the opposite of prisoner of the moment. Usually, I think they're just more really good teams than ever in the tournament. Used to be, you'd look at it, there's 4 or 5 teams that could win. Now, I mean, it could be 12,
right?
14 teams that could win. I look at Auburn, as good as they've been, they lost 3 or 4.
Yeah.
3 of their last 4. Duke, and by the way, people don't mention Knipple enough. They go straight to Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag's hurt. He's limping. Suppose he tweaks that ankle. I don't know about that. I have a little bit of confidence because I picked them in St. John's, all right, and Michigan State. Who am I betting on there? Rick Pitino and Tom Izzo. I'm looking at coaches who are great
March
jockeys.
belongs to Tom Izzo.
But
I haven't been that impressed
and Houston
with the Big Ten.
with Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking at those coaches and their ability in tight games.
So you're running away from the SEC.
I've done it all year,
but
so you got to prove it to me.
Yeah.
And they may prove it. They may make me look stupid. Florida, I love this Noah's Ark theme. They got 2 of everything because it looks true. It does.
They look really good to me. The one game I want to see early, and by the way, there are so many SEC teams in, you're going to get all SEC games in the second round.
You could.
In the second round. I want to see, I am rooting, not against Kansas, but I'm rooting to see Calipari and Pitino in the second round.
You know what?
In the second round.
Like Bill Self, I root for him. I got Kansas going out in the first game.
Yeah.
Well, that could happen, and it could happen tonight. That's Tony and Mike yesterday on PTI. Kansas is 7 seed. They're playing at 7 o'clock against Arkansas in Providence, and then the second game of that regional will be St. John's and Omaha. So if St. John's holds serve as a 2 seed, knocks off Omaha, they will advance to Saturday, and then if Arkansas beats Kansas, and it's a lower seed, Kansas is a 7 and Arkansas is a 10, then you'll have the Calipari-Pitino matchup that everybody wants to see. We'll get to more on that in a second, but we got some breaking news from the NBA. The Boston Celtics have reportedly been sold to the Bill Chisholm, who I'm not familiar with, is the managing partner at Symphony Technology by the Grossbeck family for $6.1 billion. This is an NBA team, okay? So 2 years ago, the Suns were sold at $4 billion, and people thought, oh, my God. Now, the Celtics are one of the 2 crown jewels of the NBA, the other being, of course, the Lakers. I would imagine the Knicks, if they ever went up for sale, would go for a gazillion dollars. But to think that an NBA team has sold for more than the record for an NFL team, which was only 2 years ago. Josh Harris bought the then Commanders for $6.05 billion. So this is a $500,000 more. $500,000 more. It's just crazy that they beat it. And I'm sure that was part of the asking price. Everybody wants to go higher, but it's an NBA team. They don't have the TV dollars like the NFL. They don't have the cash flow like they have. But you want to get in on a sports franchise, you got to pay the price. And so we have a new record for a sale of a team And it goes past the Commanders of only 2 years ago, with the Celtics selling for $6.1 billion. 2 years. So, while the Harris Group has a big nut, so to speak, with the team, if they went to sell it today, God knows what they would get. And, if Jerry Jones wanted to put the Cowboys up for sale, I have no doubt he'd get $10 billion. $10 billion, and he bought them for less than $200 million. Crazy. Like when the Wizards sold, and they were sold to Ted Leonsis, he got the arena with him. I think it was for $500 million. And now the Celtics are selling for $6.1 billion. Crazy. Anyway, as far as that Calipari and Rick Pitino matchup might go, this was yesterday, the news conferences for the coaches. They're in Providence, and Calipari went on the Pat McAfee show and was funny and charming as usual, and talking about the matchup with Kansas and a rotation which now has 7 players. But as he told McAfee, it may get shorter than that.
Don't tell anybody, but I only need 5. That's all. So what'll happen is if a couple guys aren't playing well, they'll just play less. At this time of the year, you're not worried about ego or anything else. It is survive and advance. It is you're playing in a tournament of 4 teams. We're here in Providence, a 4-team tournament. If you can win this, you go to another 4-team tournament. It's going to be hard. Kansas, come on, Bill Self. He won his national championship against us and me. And we won our national championship against them.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've won at Allen. They had won at our place. And now we're playing again. Bill and I, when I left Kansas, he followed me at Kansas. So he went into the role I was in. Unbelievable what he's done in every program, the culture he's built, all that stuff. And he and I are friends. I hate that play people that I consider friends or know well. I'd rather, there's all these teams. Why you got to put me against him first game?
Okay.
So we know what we're up against.
Let's talk about that, actually. Tone from Plumboro has a question for you.
Yeah, Coach. So, let's just say things go great, and you go through Bill Self, and then sitting on the other side is Coach Pitino. And you talk about your 4-team bracket. As far as coaches go, are those 2 of the toughest you can probably go through?
Sure, but don't forget about Omaha now.
I know.
They had a hell of a year.
Hypothetically.
And I'm being honest. I'm not worried about anything but this Kansas game. And I knew in our little corner, our tournament, you look at it and you say, wait a minute, there's a lot of tournament wins in that corner.
Yeah.
And so we all getting our teams prepared to play. Look, in this thing, normally, like the game last night, who has the ball last? We've all been doing this a long time, and this should be fun. I want our kids to understand that enjoy this and go for it. Show who you are. Have people watching the TV and say, man, they play hard. Man, they have fun. Look at them. How do they play together? If we get that done, that's all you can ask for as a coach.
That's John Calipari. Now with Arkansas in the tournament, going back to Providence, a place he's familiar with, coached in the Big East and coached at UMass and all that stuff. But he mentioned the numbers in the corner there with the 3 coaches. Now you got the 4 teams in Providence right now with Kansas, Arkansas, St. John's, and Omaha. And it's not stunning at all to see Rick Pitino with the 2 seed. And certainly Omaha at 15 is no surprise. But Kansas as a 7 and Arkansas as a 10, and both of them have double-digit losses. Arkansas going into the tournament with 13 losses, and Self with Kansas and 12 losses, 21-12. And Chuck Culpepper, who's covering that regional for the Post, wrote a story about this today and broke down the numbers. The 3 coaching stars, which you have Calipari, Pitino, and Self, collective 73 tournament appearances for an aggregate 13 schools. They've moved around. 3-man sums of 17 Final Four berths, 5 national titles, and 230 tournament games. there are coaching trios who get to the top, big-time schools, and don't combine for 230 regular season games. Calipari, 66 years old. Self is 62. Pitino is 72 years old. And you look at that regional, and of course, Omaha is going to be the redheaded stepchild, but you're always going to have that when you have a 2 seed like what Pitino's been able to accomplish with the help of a billionaire's money too. The guy who invented vitamin water and body armor, sold the company to Coca-Cola for billions. He's backing him. But you get those 3 guys together, those 3 old war horses. And you got stories, right? And you got guys who know how to do news conferences and do interviews like Calipari did. More from the story today from Culpepper in the Post. He says Pitino coached 2 seasons at Providence from 1985 to 1987 when his 1987 team went to Louisville and rode a number 6 seed to the Final Four by routing number 2 seed Alabama and number 1 seed Georgetown. And Tony likes to tell that story. Tony Kornheiser likes to tell the story of covering that, where Pitino said, we're going to pound it inside against Georgetown, which had, I think maybe they had Mutombo. They had some big guys there, and Georgetown was known for size. And sure enough, they pounded inside, and they beat Georgetown. That was a big upset that year. Calipari also reminding his UMass Final Four team of 1996 that they came through Providence, which, by the way, they had to vacate. Calipari made 2 Final Fours, had to vacate a couple of them because of recruiting things. So, there's stuff, and there's stuff with Pitino as well. But the game is a lot different now and a lot more allowed. There are also 3 coaches who, benefiting the sports history, have had memories with rules-minded visitors from the NCAA. There's so much history tucked atop history, even the 2 Calipari-Pitino Final Four games, 96 and 2012, that hopes to benefit. So you got a lot of history here with those 4 coaches, the 3 of them especially, in this tournament, in this regional here. And as Culpepper finishes his story today, he says, what March can do, 3 coaches here know as well as anybody ever knew. So the committee booked them all to Providence, then probably somebody snickered. Yeah, I'm sure that they looked at these guys who've accumulated all these tournament wins, 230 tournament games. And imagine that, 230 combined between the 3 of them. We got some coaching stuff going on, which is very interesting to take a look at, including a coach who's coaching today and on his way out. Hasn't really announced it, but hasn't hidden it either. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We had Gary Williams on yesterday, and I forgot to ask him about this. I forget which Final Four it was, either the 01 or the 02. He won the championship in 02, and one of them, it might have been the first one. There were rumors flying that Gary was the number 1 choice for UNLV, and they wanted him, and it was a lot of money, a lot more money than he was making at Maryland. And if the circumstances were a little bit different, if he wasn't heading into a Final Four and had to keep his team focused, he might have actually entertained the offer. But he let it go, and they hired somebody else. I forget who it was. And Gary stayed at Maryland. Fortunately, he did. Went on to win the national championship and most wins in school history. And they got his name on the court. He's in the Hall of Fame and all those things. But, anybody is going to be tempted by something like that. And he never really had the chance to do it and did the right thing for his players by staying there and just, not entertaining that. But we're in an age now where it doesn't really matter, and we'll get to Will Wade here in a minute, what he's doing. But coming up tonight, you got Michigan playing in Denver in that regional. They'll play UC San Diego. And the coach at Michigan is Dusty May. Dusty May trained in basketball, not as a player at Indiana, but as a manager at Indiana. And this has happened a few times now. And, learning from Bobby Knight, he picked up some things along the way. And last year he had Central Florida in the Final Four. Whoa, small school gets him in. And that propelled him to the Michigan job where he got the job just last year. But the Indiana job has opened up, and it opened up really at midseason when Mike Woodson I think under pressure, agreed to retire at the end of the season. And Dusty May was reportedly the top target for the job, that they wanted Dusty May badly. He wound up using that, and this is what smart coaches do. They use that as leverage to get a contract extension, which he now has at Michigan. And he'll be coaching Michigan instead of getting ready for Indiana for next year, coming up tonight against UC San Diego. He appeared yesterday on the Rich Eisen show and talked about the flirtation with Indiana and how serious it got.
My wife and I, we have 2 sons at Michigan now. My middle son, Charlie's a walk-on for us, and my youngest son, Eli, is a manager. And so we've just found we've been really, really comfortable within the Ann Arbor community. Every interaction on campus with our administration has been unbelievable. Everyone here is committed to win, and I'm surrounded by greatness and excellence every day, and it's hard to leave that. It was really, really tough to leave FAU, and when you start to plant roots and develop relationships, it's difficult and daunting to think about going and restarting that again. And so I just felt like right now, this stage, this place really, really fits us, and we've loved being at Michigan.
Well, I'm thrilled that those who could stepped up to make sure that you were financially secured in making that decision. And did you think did you talk to the team about it, or did anybody come up to you? Because obviously, kids are going to be hyper aware of what's online and being discussed in the world. Did you address it at all?
In this case, no. At FAU, we talked about it a lot, and I was very transparent with our guys as they were us. In this case, we're in the middle of the season, and it really just came open, and it was more the media assuming. And so I just didn't feel like it was even time to discuss it, because there wouldn't even need to be a decision for a long time from when we were playing and when it did happen. So I do think our guys were aware of it. I talked about it with a couple of them just in passing as they would make comments. But I do think they were curious.
What were they saying to you? What comments were they saying to you? What?
Like when we played there, they would say, like, one of the guys came up and said, "Did you ever dream you'd be in position to maybe be the coach here someday," or something like that? And I said, absolutely not. And I never thought that. I said, and I started equating to the managers that we have with us at Michigan. And I said, can you imagine coming back in 20 years and Nick or Sam or one of the guys that was with us, those guys are the head coach at Michigan right now. It just doesn't even seem real. So it's more just a hypothetical joke. But yeah, that's the type of relationship we have with our guys. They're allowed to make those comments.
That's Dusty May. I mean, is there more of a manager's name than Dusty? Hey, Dusty, go mop the floor. Hey, Dusty, bring me that water bottle. And that's what he was on Bobby Knight's staff for 4 years, I guess. And then again, he was able to, I guess, get grad assistant jobs and move up the chain. And now he's the head coach at Michigan and had the opportunity to go back to a place where he was responsible for picking up dirty jocks and be the head coach. And, whatever it was, whether and some of it was he probably didn't want to leave his team. His team is good. They're got a chance to advance as much as anybody. They're a 5 seed. They can get to the Sweet 16. And this is the problem that you have in college basketball. These coaches are being courted at a time of year where they're got to be loyal to their own players. And if you're bailing on your players during the season, what does that say? What does that say to them? That's not a good look. So now we have Will Wade, and Will Wade was pushed out the door at LSU. This was following the 2021-22 season recruiting violations, which I guess are not recruiting violations anymore. But this was in the win several years ago when they played Maryland in the tournament. Oh yeah, well he'll probably have to vacate this win because he's cheating. And well, cheating ain't cheating anymore. So Will Wade goes over to McNeese State, smaller program. He's winning there. And he's got McNeese State playing against Clemson today. That'll be 3:15 this afternoon on True TV, by the way. McNeese State, a 12 seed, playing Clemson, where he went to school. But Will Wade has already agreed, although he hasn't officially said this, but he hasn't run away from it. Asked at his news conference yesterday, have you talked to NC State? He just said yes and left it at that. But ESPN is reporting that he's already taken the job. And he's spent the last 2 years doing good things at McNeese. It's not a big school. 49-8, back-to-back Southland Conference titles. And now he's going to take on his alma mater today And I would imagine that, minutes after the buzzer, he'll be on a plane to North Carolina State to start the recruiting process there because the portal's open. Why not? So, they fight. And this is also how college basketball works. Remember NC State in the Final Four last year? Remember that? Well, this year they went 12-19, and they fired Kevin Keatts a year after making the Final Four. And they'd only made the Final Four twice before. Once in 1974 with David Thompson, and they knocked off UCLA to win the national title. The other time, 1983, when they won the national title, upsetting Houston in the final, and last year. And now one of those three coaches, Jim Valvano, won the second one, Norm Sloan the first one, and the coach who would be in that group. Only three coaches have taken teams to the Final Four. Kevin Keatts, out of a job. This is the way college basketball works these days. And I'm also reminded of this, and this goes back to 1989. Michigan, not the Fab Five Michigan team, but the Michigan team led by Ramil Robinson, which wound up winning the national title, beating Seton Hall in overtime in 1989 before the NCAA tournament, just to be, up front. This is what he gets for not trying to hide this. Bill Frieder, who was the coach at Michigan, Steve Fisher was his assistant. Frieder announces that at the end of the season, and hopefully we win the national championship, but at the end of the season, I'm going to Arizona State. Bo Schembechler, the legendary coach, football coach at Michigan, was the athletic director at the time, and he famously said, I want a Michigan man coaching Michigan, not an Arizona State man. And he told Frieder to get the hell out. Steve Fisher took over. They won the national title. Off of that, he recruited the Fab Five team, which went to back-to-back national championship games, and then lost the second one with Chris Webber calling the very unfortunate timeout that he didn't have. And so, these things that go on, and the reason is the calendar. You have to get a jump on it. You got guys in the transfer portal now. You can't let them pass, waiting for a coach. You got to get them as soon as you can. Now, if McNeese State somehow makes a miracle run here, if they manage to get past Clemson, then they're going to play the winner of Purdue and High Point. And if they get past one of them, and that's entirely possible, then you're going to the Sweet 16, and this swirl is going to go around for another couple of weeks. I mean, it's just nuts. It's just nuts the way they do it, and the transfer portal being open like this is also insane. All right, this is some football stuff. Mel Kiper yesterday is a weekly guest on the morning show here on ESPN 630. It's called Unsportsmanlike. It runs from 6 to 9. And Mel is always asked, of course, at this time about the quarterback, and he's got it on his big board that Cam Ward goes number one. And that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the second quarterback taken. But he says he won't fall farther than 9. Jaxson Dart, who played at Ole Miss, he has him going number 9 to New Orleans. Here's Mel yesterday on why he has him going that high as he talked to the crew on Unsportsmanlike.
Well, I thought that was as high. I thought about the Rams in the later first round, around 26 for Jaxson Dart. Then I kept talking to my friends in the league and looking at the whole thing and putting it together and realizing that I had Bo Nix going in the first round at 12 to Denver in 3.0, got off of it in 4.0 because I got talked out of it. And Jaxson Dart, I'm going to do exactly what I did with Bo Nix, put into a team that makes sense with Kellen Moore coming in, new head coach, get your quarterback. The division has 2 former number 1 picks in Baker and the emerging Bryce Young, and also Michael Penix Jr., top 10 pick last year. So you got to keep up with your division. This isn't a force. Jaxson Dart's a talent. He's 6'2", 220 plus. He can move exceptionally well with his legs. He can beat you there. His arm strength is more than adequate. He can make throws left, rolling right. And the thing that's underrated about him, like I said, is a 3rd and 8. He can pick up 25. And he is aggressive, fast, and athletic. So he is a kind of a dynamic talent that people aren't giving enough credit to. They're saying, well, he's Lane Kiffin. It's RPOs. It's not the NFL. Yes, he has to layer throws better. All young quarterbacks have that need to improve in terms of layering throws. And they're flat with some throws. And they get away with it in college. You can't get away with it in the NFL. But for Jaxson Dart, it goes from 62 to 65 to 69% the last 3 years. 20, 23, 29 in terms of touchdowns. 11 rushing touchdowns and 1,500 rushing yards over a 3-year period. But he's a great kid. He's a competitor. So I don't see why people would think 9 is too high. Now you say, could he go higher? I don't scoff at anything in the draft. I used to say, you're crazy. Guess what? When you say that, you usually are crazy because it happens, and you're doubting something. Anything can happen in the draft. You never say, unless it's ridiculous nonsense. But this is a quarterback that has the ability to be the 9th pick in the draft. And if you say higher, I'm not going to argue with it.
Mel, earlier this week you said that you think Shedeur Sanders will be the better pro when it comes to the head-to-head comparison with Cam Ward. Can you tell us why you see it that way?
Well, Shedeur to me is all about old school. And if you want that type of quarterback, you look at Shedeur. If you go away from that and say we need more mobility, we need a stronger arm, then that's Cam Ward with the arm angle. So it depends if you want Cam Ward more for the way the game's played now, or you still think you can win from the pocket. If you feel like you can protect and build that fortress around your quarterback, which they did in New England with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and others, then you go with Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur is – I'd say from the people I've spoken to, even in the league and even in the media and fans, he's vastly underrated. I mean, he is getting talked about like, well, Peyton Manning was a little underrated too, which seems mind-boggling to say. I had people in the league hating on Peyton Manning. A lot of everybody didn't love Peyton Manning. 50% of people thought Ryan Leaf should have gone number 1 over Manning, and Manning was overhyped because of his last name. So I guess Shedeur's feeling the same punishment of, I get the wrong last name. It's all because of Deion. It was all because of Archie. And that's not the case. And that has helped them. And Eli coming to New York after Archie was the guy who kind of paved the way for that. And now you got Shedeur to New York because of the big lights, the big stage. They were used to that. The Mannings were used to it. Shedeur's used to it.
Yeah, I don't know why, Mel, more teams don't look at that as an asset, that Shedeur knows what it's like to have the spotlight on him. He knows what it's like to have pressure and expectations placed upon him based on his dad and his success. And he's gone places and built up programs. Are teams viewing that as more of an asset or more of a deterrent?
That's a heck of a question because I've talked to people about that and getting a lot of arguments about that, Michelle. It's a case where when you look at Shedeur, I keep hearing he's not explosive. He doesn't have the explosive arm. He doesn't have the explosive running ability. He's only 6'1.5", 212. He's been with his father all the time, and he has never been away from Deion. So what? So what? He went to Jackson State, and he won just about all the games, lost 3 games in 2 years, and he goes there. And he didn't have a game the last 2 years, despite a horrible offensive line 2 years ago, and not a great one this past year by any stretch. And he was never less than 60% in any game. He was over 70% or higher in 11 of 13 games this past year. I said yesterday, thrown against air, it's tough to do that. So to me, when you look at a guy like Shedeur, I get why people would put Cam Ward ahead of him. I just don't understand. Hey, and he may. I'm not saying he couldn't be a bust. Hey, I've liked quarterbacks, and they turn it to be busts. I like Shedeur. Maybe he will be. I would bet on Shedeur. And I just like his mindset. What's underrated about him is how he sees the field.
Yes, Mel, yes. Thank God somebody said it.
Well, watch him. When he's rolling left, and that's underrated too, he can roll left or right and make accurate throws. And the thing is, people always say, you don't want a quarterback who has it easy. You want NFL conditions. Who played in more NFL conditions with a crowded pocket than Shedeur Sanders did? He wasn't out there running around, eating a lunch and then having a dessert and then throwing the football because nobody was touching him. That wasn't the case with Shedeur. Every time he got the ball, he was under duress immediately. And he was spotting whether it was Wester, whether it was Horn, whether it was Shepard, whether it was Travis. He was spotting somebody, and he got the ball to those guys. And like I said, those numbers I gave you before don't lie. This kid was on fire just about every game.
You know what's interesting? We're talking about Mel Kiper Jr. What's interesting is if you think about the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, let's just go through them very quickly. Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson, 32nd pick in the draft. Louisville. The Florida schools weren't after him. He went to Louisville.
Right.
Josh Allen, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts had to transfer because he got benched, not because of NIL. Joe Burrow had to transfer because he wasn't playing. Mel, the quote-unquote struggle is something that it seems like the teams are starting to recognize, and both quarterbacks, Cam Ward and Shedeur, have that, and I think that people ignore that because of the fact that, let's be honest, Shedeur was a millionaire before he ever took a snap. That doesn't mean he didn't struggle to get to where he's gotten to.
Yeah, and I think Chris knows this as well as anybody. This one, I brought this up yesterday. The notion that you bring with him a circus and a distraction to whatever city he goes to, and it will be all about Shedeur, it'll be all about Deion. That is the most ridiculous nonsense I've ever heard. Deion was a great teammate. He was a phenomenal worker, phenomenal player, did everything right, went to the Atlanta Braves, and they loved him as a teammate. I don't get why people are making those statements because they're totally inaccurate. And Deion, hey, who orchestrated a move of Eli Manning from the Chargers to the Giants? Archie Manning did, right? He manipulated the draft. There's no question. Manipulated the process. The Chargers had him. They said, "No, he ain't going there." You saw when he walked down stage; he didn't look very happy. So they were working the process. Deion hadn't said anything. I mean, it's all about just go play football, go work hard, go to work, and that's all Shedor's about. That's all Deion was about. So this circus atmosphere that people think is going to be created is just ridiculous garbage.
Well, yeah, that's true, but Deion is smart, and he's seen it before, and this goes back a long way. Mel knows this better than anybody. He said that John Elway is the best player he ever projected for the draft, and John Elway went number 1 to the Baltimore Colts in 1983. And as the story goes, Elway's father, Jack Elway, who was a coach, did not like Frank Kush, who was the coach of the Colts at the time. He'd been the coach at Arizona State, didn't like the way he did things. There was a lot of stuff made about, he doesn't want to play in Baltimore. No, it was the coach. And so they used the leverage of baseball. Elway wasn't good enough to get to the major leagues. He was like the 4th best player on the Stanford baseball team. But, he had a name. George Steinbrenner liked names. They signed him to a minor league contract. And Bob Irsay, the drunk owner of the Colts, blinked and traded Elway to Denver for Chris Hinton, who was a pretty good tackle, and a couple of players who played a little while, and traded away the greatest quarterback of his generation. So, that's the way those things go. And I think Deion could manipulate things a little bit. Those stories of Shedeur being less than cooperative in some of the interviews, including the Cleveland Browns. Who knows? But in terms of the player that they'll get once he gets there, I don't think they're going to have a problem with it. As Eli was not a problem when he went to the New York Giants. One other thing on the NFL, these are rule proposals that came yesterday as the owners get ready for their meetings. Under one proposal submitted by the Detroit Lions, the division winner with the conference's best record would still get the number 1 overall seed. But after that, teams would be stacked up by records regardless of whether they won their division or got wild card spots. Now, this wouldn't have affected the Lions this year. They had the best record, 15-2, and then the Vikings finished 14-3, the Packers 11-6 in their division. But the Vikings got the number 5 seed with a 14-3 record, only one worse, and the Packers at 11-6 got to 7. If you did this on record, the Vikings would be the 3 seed and the Packers number 5. So that seemed somewhat magnanimous on the part of the Detroit Lions. However, there is one also from the Lions that if you have a contact down the field, that it would not be an automatic first down. Here it is. A proposal that would eliminate the automatic first down that comes with illegal contact or defensive holding submitted by the Lions, and they led the league last year with 11 flags for defensive holding. So, in other words, if it's a defensive holding call and it's say 3rd and 15, it's not an automatic first down with the 5 yards you get for the defensive holding call. Also, the tush push, which you've heard before that Green Bay is pushing that. They want to get that banned. Also, a submission from the Eagles to give both teams guaranteed possession in overtime like they do in the playoff games, even if you score a touchdown. Don't like that. Don't like the overtime rules. Sorry. Coin flip, settle it that way, but we'll see where that goes. And then a resolution from the Steelers that allows some direct contact between free agents and teams that are pursuing them during the 3-day negotiating period that precedes the opening of the league year. It seems like this is happening anyway. I guess they just want to make it legal. And then there was a change submitted by several teams that would allow the preparing of K-balls that are used for kicking before game day are allowed to do that with balls that are used on other plays. So in other words, you can pump them a little bit or get a little softened up, maybe use them for footballs in other ways. I don't know. These are all things that don't seem major except for the tush push. If they ban the tush push, then we'll have some carpet going on. But the consensus seems to be, figure out how to stop it. Sorry, and it doesn't cause a lot of injuries. The Eagles will say that. The evidence points to the fact it doesn't cause a lot of injuries, but These are things that go on this time of year, and everybody gets back and forth on this stuff. Hey, old enough to remember this?
Just a jump to the left. With your hands on your hips.
That, of course, is from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which came out 50 years ago, 1975. And this became a cult classic, the classic cult classic, and it is still running in theaters. And if you have not been to the Rocky Horror Picture Show in a theater, I think it's something that should be on the bucket list. Now, I saw it in 1978 in Houston with a friend of mine who told me what it was going to be like, and it exceeded my expectations. You have people in the front of this, and usually it's in a big theater with a stage and everything, and they're acting out the lines and miming the words, and let's say, "Oh, look, it's raining," and then they'll squirt water pistols all over, and it's really a crazy experience. And it ran at the Biograph here for years. I don't know if it's still running here, but it's running somewhere in the country. And the story in the Post the other day about this documentary that's come out called Strange Journey, the story of Rocky Horror. And it is, as they say, arguably the most enduring rock musical of all time. It was directed by Linus O'Brien, son of the Rocky Horror Picture Show creator Richard O'Brien. And in the original film, which was an adaptation of O'Brien's 1973 London stage musical about a transvestite space alien, total flop when it opened in 1975. This happens all the time. Then came the midnight screenings, which transformed it into a cult B-movie classic completely by word of mouth, with fans showing up in costume and throwing rice at the wedding scene. Oh, yes, I remember that in Houston as well. Today, Rocky Horror is the longest-running theatrical release in film history, 50 years and going strong. Hundreds of theaters around the world still screen it, often with a shadow cast that performs elaborate lip syncs of the entire movie while it plays. I'll never forget this. This again, I'm going back myself here, almost 50 years. But this at that point had been 3 years after the movie came out, so it had picked up some momentum. And the people who played in this movie, for like this, I'm sure it wasn't a very high budget film. Two of them went on to very significant careers. One of them, Susan Sarandon, very young Susan Sarandon, who plays Janet in the movie, and Brad, who is played by Barry Bostwick, who later played George Washington. They wind up in a mysterious castle after their car breaks down. They're taken on a dizzying journey of sexual liberation led by the castle's owner, whose name is Frank N. Furter, played by Tim Curry, who originated the stage role and who manages to seduce them both. It's hard to follow the plot, but it's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on. And there are people who were influenced by this. Now, Meatloaf, before he's Meatloaf, he really emerges a couple of years later, but this was kind of a break for him. People who see the film, says here in the story, frequently become devotees for life. In Strange Journey, Jack Black recalls how his sister took him to a midnight screening when he was 9, and it inspired him to be a rock star. He loved how crazy the audience got, but in particular, he loved Meatloaf, who plays a rejected rockabilly monster in the film. Black thought he looked as if he could be the older brother and later cast Meatloaf to play his dad in Tenacious D's The Pick of Destiny movie. For the 2020 election, Black even did a Rocky the Vote video of Time Warp featuring Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Sarah Silverman, and others singing the lyrics about taking a jump to the left and a jump to the right. So, you think about this and you think about what Susan Sarandon did after that, many famous film roles, including the one that she played in Bull Durham as Baseball Annie. I remember her more so. And, I did see the Rocky Horror Picture Show in 78, but it really didn't register. She played in a film that came out in 1980 called Atlantic City, and it has Burt Lancaster in it. And it's about the Atlantic City as gambling is starting to come in, once they got casinos there and how the city was changing. But she does a scene with lemons at the window, which cannot be missed. But you think about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and if you're my age, you're thinking about your youth and the crazy stuff that was going on at the time, and how the culture was changing, and it was changing because of shows like this, and also. Saturday Night Live was really, I think 78 was one of their great years. And, I remember in high school when it came out, and this would have come out about the same time because Saturday Night Live premiered in October of 75. So they're now celebrating their 50th anniversary. And the 50th anniversary of a show, a movie which, really didn't get much traction. It took a couple of years to get this traction, and it's because of the way that people did these different things. So we'll see. I don't know what network this is going to be on. Again, it's called Strange Journey, and it's about, about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But I'm anxious to see it. I don't know what network it's going to be on, or even if they have a distributor. Oh, here it is. The documentary, which played at South by Southwest last week, does not have a distributor yet, but it was screened by William Morris Endeavor last week, and they're hopeful that the interest is high. So, I'll be very interested in seeing that. Strange Journey, the story of Rocky Horror. And, to think I saw it when I was, 19, 20 years old. I haven't seen it since. I'm certainly aware of the movie, but to think that it would have that kind of staying power. Well, I guess a lot of people didn't think I'd have that kind of staying power, but here I am all these years later, still yapping on the radio. All right, Bram is coming up next. The balls start rolling in about an hour and 20 minutes. Make sure you get your brackets in. We'll have recaps on the buzzer beaters and all the good stuff that goes along with it. As Scott Hansen tweeted out today, March Madness, when wins turn into losses and brackets get busted. And it all starts in a little over an hour. That's it for me. I will see you back here tomorrow morning, coming up at 9 a.m.